What happens when a quiet roadside stop turns into an unexpected showdown? Watch as Clint Eastwood, a man known for staying out of trouble, finds himself in a moment that will test not just his strength, but his resolve, character, and sense of justice. Stay until the end and ask yourself, what would you have done in his place? And don't forget to subscribe to The Stories Told. Hit the bell icon and leave your thoughts in the comments. Clint Eastwood was driving along a lonely stretch of road. His dark green pickup moved steadily through the golden haze of sunset. It had been a long day and he was eager to get home. As the road curved through the edges of a sleepy American town, he pulled into a small gas station that looked like it hadn't changed in decades. There was only one old fuel pump. The flickering sign buzzed with age. The convenience store next to it sold everything from dusty soda cans to weathered spare tires. As Clint stepped out of his truck and began fueling up, a group of teenagers lounging nearby looked over and froze. One of them, a boy with a buzz cut, stopped mid-sip of his drink. "No way," he whispered, his soda slipping from his hand. He ran over, wide-eyed. "Wait, you're Clint Eastwood." Clint looked up slowly, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Depends who's asking," he said in his low, gravelly voice. Within seconds, more people gathered. Phones came out. Teenagers and adults alike couldn't resist the chance to snap a photo with the legendary man. Ever patient, Clint nodded, posed, and offered a few dry one-liners that only made him more iconic. Among the crowd was Tyler, a young African-American boy holding a sign made from cardboard and glitter. "You are my hero." Clint looked at the sign, then at the mom, and crouched down slowly, his knees cracking softly as he did. "You made this for me?" he asked, his voice quiet but sincere. Tyler nodded quickly, eyes shining. "I've watched all your movies. You're the toughest man ever." Clint gave a tired but kind smile and rested a hand gently on Tyler's shoulder. "Thanks, partner. But real strength, well, it comes from in here," he said, tapping his chest lightly. "Never let anyone tell you you're not enough. You hear me?" Tyler nodded again, clutching the sign proudly as Clint stood and took a picture with him. But not everyone watching was impressed. At the far edge of the gas station lot, a group of bikers sat watching. Their leather jackets bore the emblem of the Rattlesnake Riders, a gang known more for intimidation than decency. Their leader, a thick-set brute named Roy, sat on a dusty Harley, a snake tattoo coiled around his neck. Roy leaned forward, sneering. "Well, look at their horn," he said to his gang. "The great Clint Eastwood, playing cowboy for the kids." One of the bikers chuckled darkly. "All bark, no bite. Bet he can't throw a punch anymore." Roy stood up, brushing dust from his jacket. "Let's find out." The sound of their heavy boots crunching gravel cut through the warm evening. The energy shifted. People began backing away. Phones went down. Smiles faded. Clint didn't move. He didn't have to. Roy led the group up to him, mockery dripping from his tone. "Well, if it ain't the old cowboy himself, signing autographs like some kind of saint." Clint looked him dead in the eye, unbothered. "I'm just getting gas," he said calmly. "You should try minding your own." The bikers laughed. Roy stepped in closer. "You think that old movie bravado means anything in the real world?" Clint didn't flinch. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said slowly, "but I don't walk away when it finds me." Roy leaned in, grinning. "What's wrong, Clint? Scared the camera's not rolling this time?" Before Clint could answer, a small voice interrupted. "He's not scared." It was Tyler. His little body trembled, but he stood tall. "He's the bravest man I know. Leave him alone." "He's the best fighter in the world. Leave him alone," Tyler cried out, his voice shaking but strong. The bikers broke into cruel laughter. Roy leaned toward the boy, his voice dripping with mockery. "Well, look at this little tough guy. Maybe someone should teach you some manners." He raised his hand threateningly. But before his hand could fall, Clint stepped forward, silent, calm, and absolutely unshakable. He stood between Tyler and Roy like a wall of stone, his cold, steely gaze fixed on the biker. "That's enough," Clint said in a voice like thunder just before a storm. Everything stopped. The laughter, the threats, even the air felt still. Roy took a step back, slightly startled by the sudden shift in the atmosphere, but quickly recovered his arrogant smile. Well, well, Roy sneered, trying to sound in control. Looks like the old man's got some bark left in him. What are you gonna do, cowboy? Slap me with a movie quote? The tension in the gas station was thick as fog. Clint didn't move an inch. He gently placed a protective hand on Tyler's shoulder. Go find your mom, son. Let me handle this. Tyler nodded, reluctantly backing away into the safety of the small crowd. His eyes never left Clint. Clint's gaze returned to Roy, calm but unyielding. You've had your fun, he said. Now ride out of here before you regret staying. Roy let out a harsh, barking laugh. What if I say no? What if I want to see if you are more than just some old gunslinger pretending to be tough? The other bikers began closing in, their boots grinding against the gravel. The jeers returned, uglier now. The crowd that had moments ago been taking pictures was frozen in place, watching with weird awe and fearful eyes. And Roy took a step closer, but before he could move again, one of his men charged at Clint, swinging a length of chain in a wide arc. Clint shifted slightly, dodging the attack with eerie ease. In one smooth motion, he grabbed the chain mid-swing, yanked the man forward, and drove a sharp, deliberate punch into his ribs. The biker collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Tyler's voice rang out in the background. Come on, Clint, show them who you are. Roy's smile twisted into something darker. Well, boys, he said, cracking his knuckles, looks like the legend wants to dance. He didn't have to say it twice. The gang lunged all at once, shouting, roaring, weapons in hand. But Clint didn't move with panic. He moved with purpose. One came at him with a pipe. Clint sidestepped and knocked it clean from his hands with a single blow to the forearm. Another came with a broken bottle. Clint deflected it, twisted the attacker's wrist until the glass fell harmlessly, and then shoved him backward into the dirt. They kept coming, but it didn't matter. Clint was efficient, every move calculated. He wasted no energy. His style wasn't flashy. It was controlled, deliberate, and devastating. One tried to grab him from behind, locking his arms around Clint's chest. With a calm grunt, Clint shifted his weight, drove an elbow into the attacker's ribs, and flipped him over his shoulder. The man hit the ground with a thud and groaned in pain, not getting up. Roy, now red-faced and furious, shoved aside his fallen men and pulled a knife from his jacket. The blade caught the light of the setting sun, sharp and eager for blood. All right, Roy growled, enough of this game. Let's see what's left in you, cowboy. The crowd gasped. Tyler's mother grabbed him close, shielding him with her arms. Clint's eyes narrowed. His boots dug into the gravel. He didn't flinch. You really want to do this? He asked, voice low and cold as winter wind. Roy didn't answer. With a guttural yell, he lunged, knife first, aiming straight for Clint's chest. Time seemed to slow. But Clint was faster. He turned, caught Roy's wrist midair, twisted it hard enough to make the knife fall with a metallic clink. Then, with one precise motion, he drove his fist into Roy's gut, forcing the big man to stagger backward. Clint stepped forward, silent, expression unreadable. He raised his hands slowly in front of Roy's face, not in mockery, but in warning. I told you, he said quietly. You should have walked away. Then, with all the force of his years and experience, Clint swung, his fist connecting solidly with Roy's jaw. Roy flew backward, crashing into the gravel, motionless and groaning. The gas station fell into silence again, except for the sound of bikers scrambling to pick up their broken pride. One by one, they backed away, avoiding Clint's gaze, climbing onto their bikes and roaring off into the night. Clint stood over Roy, eyes sharp and steady. With one final, decisive motion, he grabbed the man by the jacket and, using pure leverage and experience, not brute force, he flipped him hard onto the gravel. The sound echoed through the station like thunder. Roy lay still, breathless and dazed. His earlier arrogance had vanished. The other bikers looked between their leader and Clint, unsure of what to do. One by one, they backed away, muttering curses under their breath as they mounted their bikes and roared off into the night, leaving Roy behind. Clint turned back toward the crowd. The tension lifted. His expression softened. Tyler stepped forward, his face glowing with pride. You showed them who's boss, he said, eyes wide with admiration. Clint crouched slowly, resting a weathered hand on the boy's shoulder. Thanks, champ, he said quietly. But being strong, it ain't about swinging fists. It's about knowing when to stand up, for yourself and for others. Tyler nodded, the words hitting deep. I'll remember that, sir. I promise. As the dust began to settle and people returned to their senses, the wail of sirens broke the silence. Red and blue lights lit up the scene as the sheriff's unit arrived. At the front of the line stepped Sheriff Alice Weidel, a composed, sharp-eyed woman with a confident stride and a calm authority that instantly restored order. She approached Clint, taking in the scene, Roy still groaning on the ground, the crowd whispering in amazement. Mr. Eastwood, she said, her voice a mix of surprise and respect. You handled this on your own? Clint gave a subtle nod, brushing dust off his sleeve. They were harassing folks, especially the kid. I couldn't just stand by. Sheriff Weidel glanced over at Tyler, who stood beside his mother. Both were watching Clint with admiration. Well, she said, looking back at Roy, you did more than we could in months. This guy's been a menace to this town for years. And now, thanks to all these witnesses, we've got him. Two officers moved in and began cuffing Roy, who hissed through clenched teeth as they hauled him to his feet. This ain't over, he spat, glaring at Clint. You think you're a hero? You're just a washed-up cowboy who got lucky. Clint took one slow step forward, voice steady. I didn't start this, Roy. You did. Heroes don't pick fights, but they sure as hell finish them when they have to. Roy looked away, beaten in more ways than one, as he was dragged toward the patrol car. The moment the door shut behind Roy, the crowd, previously silent, burst into applause. A few even wiped away tears. Tyler slipped from his mother's arms and ran to Clint, throwing himself around him in a sudden hug. Thank you, Mr. Eastwood, he said, voice trembling with emotion. You're the best. Clint knelt again, looking the boy in the eye. You're the real champ here, Tyler, he said with a warm smile. Takes guts to speak up when you're scared. But listen, being brave doesn't mean rushing into danger. It means standing for what's right, smart and steady. Remember that. I will, sir, Tyler said, nodding eagerly. Tyler's mother approached next, her voice shaking. Thank you, Mr. Eastwood. You saved us tonight. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here. Clint gave a humble nod. I just did what anyone ought to do. Behind them, Sheriff Weidel was directing her deputies, taking statements and securing the scene. She looked over at Clint and offered a respectful nod. You're welcome in this town anytime, Mr. Eastwood, she said. Tonight, you reminded everyone what real courage looks like. Clint tipped his hat slightly in return. I appreciate that, Sheriff. I just did what anyone should do, Clint said with a shrug, his voice low and sincere. As officers moved through the crowd, taking statements and securing the scene, people couldn't help but drift toward Clint. Some shook his hand, others asked for a photo. Many simply thanked him in hushed voices, still awed by what they had witnessed. Despite the attention, Clint stayed humble, deflecting praise with a neat or a soft-spoken, glad everyone's safe. As the last patrol car pulled away, carrying Roy into custody, Clint made his way back to his truck. He opened the door, ready to finally drive home and put this long evening behind him. But before he could get in, a familiar voice called out behind him. Wait! Clint turned. It was Tyler running toward him, holding something small and crumpled in his hand. He stopped in front of Clint, out of breath but beaming. I made this for you, he said, cheeks red with pride. It was a drawing, done quickly, probably during the commotion. It showed Clint standing tall among fallen bikers, with 3 simple words written in bold letters across the top. My hero. Clint stared at it for a long moment, the corners of his eyes softening. He smiled, not the kind meant for cameras, but a quiet, genuine smile that came from deep inside. This is pretty special, he said, carefully taking the paper. Thanks, partner. I'll keep it someplace safe. Tyler's smile stretched wide. A few feet away, his mother wiped a tear from her cheek as she watched the exchange. Clint gently tousled Tyler's hair before folding the drawing and slipping it into his jacket pocket. He gave them one final nod. You two take care now. As Tyler and his mother waved goodbye, Clint climbed into his truck. The engine rumbled to life, and the vehicle rolled out onto the road, disappearing slowly into the fading night. Inside the web, Clint drove in silence, the hum of the tires and the soft growl of the engine his only companions. After a few miles, he reached into his jacket and pulled out Tyler's drawing. He looked at it again, this time longer. It reminded him why he did what he did. Not for fame, not for gratitude, but because sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, one quiet act of courage could shape someone's life forever. When he got home, Clint placed the drawing on his nightstand. He stood there for a moment looking at it. Then, with a faint smile, he switched off the light. "Never underestimate the impact of a good deed," he muttered to himself. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'd love to hear what you thought of the story. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to The Stories Told. We bring you real tales of courage, honor, and unexpected heroes.